Hey everyone, Michael Short here. Come on, let's go outdoors. Well, a big event taking place up in the northern part of our province. The bison hunt is back. After missing the previous year, the folks in charge have decided to bring it back for the 23-24 season. And a real pleasure to welcome KayeDon Wilcox, who is the Fish and Wildlife Director for Northwest Alberta with Alberta Environment and Protected Areas. KayeDon, thanks so much for spending some time with us today.
Thanks for having me today, Mike.
As I mentioned, there was not a bison hunt in the 22-23 season. What were the reasons for that?
Yeah, it's actually been several years, Michael, since we've actually had the HayZama hunt up in northwestern Alberta. So for the past several seasons, when we last statused the population several years ago, we actually saw a decline in numbers. Part of that might have been associated with natural limitations or natural events within that population. We got down to a population level that was under our population target. And for that reason, we actually did put a pause on the HayZama hunt. And with that, it really meant that we didn't see a lot of risk in regards to disease transfer, some of the reasons that we do the hunt. So it was suspended. We've actually seen some increase in that population. Our target is to maintain that population between about 400 to 600 individuals. And our last census in February of 2023 actually showed that the population was between about 500 to 6 individuals. So that actually enabled us or required us actually, Michael, to look at the hunt again, put the hunt in, because what we are trying to do with that population is actually actively manage and limit its growth because of the risk of expansion into eastern Alberta, where we do have diseased bison, and the HayZama population being one of the very few non-diseased or disease-free populations that we've got in Alberta.
In terms then of numbers of a harvest, what are you looking at?
So for this year, and we annually look at that depending on some of the vital rates that we are monitoring, Michael. So this year, what we identified in order to kind of keep that population between 400 to 600 in the next year or two was we did provide 120 licenses, so up to the harvest of 120 individual bison on that, of which we end up splitting those proportionally between Indigenous communities and Indigenous harvesters, as well as recreational harvesters. So roughly around 20% of the population where we've identified that it could be harvested up to.
I was up in HayZama this past spring, and we're literally in Zama City and walking a portion of it, and lo and behold, around the corner came a small herd of bison, and Lyle Fullerton, the fellow that I was with from the province at the time, indicated that one of the reasons they do bring the hunt in is because of public safety. I mean, here you've got some big animals wandering down Main Street, and that can cause get an honorary bull in there, and it could be a problem.
Yeah, I'm glad you got to experience that, Michael. And I think first and foremost, like I spoke to, is our disease mitigation requirements of why we have a hunt, and one of the tools that we use to mitigate keeping this population disease free versus being able to contact populations in the east that are not disease free. But you're right, Michael. One of the other pieces is with the growth of the HayZama bison herd, there are inevitably conflicts that occur between humans, vehicles, and these large creatures. And so that is one of the things that we worked actively with the communities there, which is trying to minimize the opportunities for that conflict. And you probably saw signs across the road or along the road, Michael, in regards to sighting of bison, ensuring that folks, when they are traveling those roadways, are aware that there is up to a 2,000-pound animal that might be using that same roadway to access where it's trying to get to as well. So
You mentioned that licenses are being issued to both First Nations and resident hunters. Let's talk about the First Nations first, because
Mhm.
obviously that is a culturally significant event for them, is it not?
Yeah, and for sure, and Indigenous communities, and notably Denetah First Nation, were instrumental even in the reintroduction of wood bison into that part of our province many decades ago. I guess now at this point, Michael. So you're right. And one of the things that certainly we've continued to collaborate with local Indigenous communities on, and part of that, of course, is then proportionally ensuring that for their subsistence use, cultural, spiritual use, that they have access to those bison when we've identified that there is a number or an abundance of those that are beyond our population targets. So that's an important part of our program and our disease management program and conflict program, Michael. And then, of course, the recreational use of harvest as well, is providing those recreational hunters with an opportunity. For some, it's mostly a once in a lifetime opportunity to harvest a bison, while also being part or participating in our management objectives of, again, disease management and minimizing conflict.
Now, at first blush, I guess someone might say, "Oh my gosh, this is so easy. These animals are so big. How do you can't miss them." And I've got to tell you from firsthand experience, we followed a small band of bison that are rumbling down one of the forestry roads, and they turned a corner, and when we got to that corner, they had disappeared. I mean, it was just like as if they were, I don't know, picked up by aircraft and moved somewhere, because we could find no hide nor hair of them, because there were lots of tracks, but were those tracks that particular? I guess what I'm getting at is this is not an easy hunt.
Yeah, for a lot of reasons, Michael, and it's amazing that 50 to 100 thousand to 2,000 pound animals can suddenly seemingly vanish in the forest. And of course, wood bison that have been part of our landscape in northern Alberta, all the way up, of course, to the Yukon, Alaska territories, have become acclimated to those types of surroundings. So they can be deceivingly good at hiding themselves. They can also be, as you found, Michael, they can be found in great numbers. And I think the one thing that many folks that haven't experienced large bison themselves or populations is there is a big safety component that I think folks have to account for as if they're participating in the hunt or if they're traveling in those areas. These are large animals. They can be territorial. I often say, and Lyle might have said this, Michael, is they go where they want to go, when they want to go, generally speaking. But what we have, even in this hunt so far this year that's just underway, we've had one incident of hunter safety where a hunter did wound a bison, and that bison retaliated on that hunter, and that did cause a medical incident with that hunter. So there's a big safety component. These are large animals. If one animal is harvested, that's a lot of animal for somebody to go through. I think we all think of being more traditional in regards to moose harvest, etc. And this is a whole nother category of size and complexity as well with those animals, Michael.
So are there either biologists or conservation officers on site helping with the coordination of this, or monitoring the hunt to, as you just indicated, maybe lend assistance should there be an incident like that? How do you folks go about monitoring the hunt?
Yeah, it's a great question. We do work closely with our partners within Fish and Wildlife Enforcement Services. We do have a dedicated technician that is actually assisting on the ground out of high level in regards to responding for assistance on those, Michael, as well as we do have some conditions associated with the hunt. All hunters, both Indigenous and non-Indigenous hunters, are required to register a harvested animal within 5 business days at a local office. So we're assisting with the facilitation of that. We've also this year asked hunters to voluntarily provide their animals for blood samples. And so in previous years, it's been a requirement to provide blood sampling so that we can test animals from HayZama for bovine tuberculosis and brucellosis. This year, it's not a requirement, but we're encouraging folks to, and we are responding on site as much as we can, Michael, to get to harvested animals, help hunters take those samples, and then assist with the processing of those. So we do have multiple staff in high level throughout much of the hunt, with the exception probably of the Christmas holiday. And of course, our Fish and Wildlife Enforcement friends are responding to any concerns, et cetera, that they're seeing. So by and large, we've had great compliance, and yeah, we're hoping to see that through the next 2 months of the hunt. So.
Not to put you on the spot, but do you have a sense of just when it was announced that the hunt was coming back, what kind of reaction was there from the hunting community to get their names in for a potential draw?
Yeah, the hunt has always been popular. I think in previous years and because we provide no priority associated with applications from one year to the next, we have seen upwards of 30,000 applications, of which we draw just a small number of those, of course. So it does end up being a once in a lifetime opportunity for hunters. So there's always been a great deal of interest. There's, of course, this is a unique harvest opportunity in Alberta with an iconic species for Alberta as well. So I think lots of encouragement. I think there's usually questions, Michael, to us, which is like, why wasn't there a hunt? Why was there? Thinking more traditionally like moose. And of course, this is a unique hunt in that we're using the hunt as a tool to actively manage the size of that population. And so when we're under that target or within that, it isn't necessary to use the hunt as a disease mitigation or conflict mitigation tool. So that's part of our messaging out there is why we do the hunt. And of course, we're appreciative of the hunters that participate because it is an important part of keeping that herd disease free.
I believe the hunt goes until, at least for First Nations, up to the end of March, and for residents, the end of February. If at the end of that time period, the total number of tags had not been filled, and again, keeping to the conversation about controlling population, would that whatever's not filled be added to the next hunt, or do you kind of allow for nature over the course of the upcoming season to look after things?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and really what we'll do, and Michael, it's a great question you bring up because the one thing we also do as part of that monitoring is we will do another minimum count that we do through an aerial-based survey. We typically do that in February or March, so that just at the very tail end of the hunt, and from that'll provide us numbers as to how successful hunter harvest has been, whether there's been some natural mortality associated with this. We're in a pretty mild winter so far, so we might not expect winter conditions to impact mortality. And those survey results from end of February into March really tell us what those next numbers would be if we do need to have a hunt next year, and what that would be. So it won't necessarily be that unharvested animals would carry over into the next year's allocation, Michael, but it would really be determined based upon that minimum count that we would do towards the end of the harvest season.
So. All right, KayeDon, we'll leave it there. Thanks so much for giving us an insight as to the how and the why of bison hunt up in the HayZama area.
Great. Well, thanks for having me today, Michael.